And I just want to welcome everybody to Planetary Gig Talk Live. I'm Jefferson Glassie, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gigs Society, whose mission is creating unity through music, or as I like to say, making connections through music with the intention of bringing peace. And we've been doing these Planetary Gig Talk Live conversations recently. I've done quite a few podcasts with a number of folks, including a couple of our panelists, and always so grateful for people who participate. And this conversation today is about Ho'oponopono and music. And you know, they're both so powerful about healing. And I knew about Ho'oponopono for a little while. I got the book Zero Limits by Joe Vitale quite some time ago, and then come to find out when I went to Victor Wooten's Spirit of Music camp at Wooten Woods outside Nashville, that Ho'oponopono was a topic that we were discussing. And I think they tie in. I have more questions than answers about that. But I think particularly now at this time in our nation's situation where we could use some healing, you know, as Joseph Wooten has said, democracy needs music and music needs democracy. And I think we could all use a little bit more music, democracy, and Ho'oponopono. So hopefully we have some good conversations coming on today. And I want to introduce our panel. First of all, the amazing, let's see, we have some non-video participants, and I want to make sure that they mute, but the amazing Grammy Award winner, percussionist for Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, Roy Futureman Wooten. Roy, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really glad to be here. Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about Ho'oponopono before. It's had some great conversations, and just looking forward to really delving a little bit further into that. So
yes.
I appreciate that.
Pivotal.
Also, so when I'm sort of wondering who out there knows about Ho'oponopono and music, who would be, you know, kind of an authoritative person to talk about it. And I go to the internet, of course, and find the guitar monk, Mathew Dixon, who plays music with Joe Vitale, who wrote the Zero Limits book. And, you know, they make music about Ho'oponopono, beautiful, calm music. You can find it on the internet. Mathew, thank you so much for joining us today as well.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. This is very fun. Yeah, for me, whenever you take anything new on that's of a spiritual nature, you at some point realize that it's been there the whole entire time. But it's nice to have tools to go to. It's nice to have information. It's nice to have teachers to go to so that you can learn more and you can kind of hone in on what you're really thoughts that maybe you've already had. So I've always felt like it was in my music. I just didn't have a name for it. Then I had the opportunity to play for one of the events that Joe Vitale did after reading Zero Limits, of course. And I'd already met Joe prior to that with Dr. Hu Len. And also Ma Bell Katz was also there, which is a bonus if anybody knows Ma Bell Katz. But I got to play music at the event, got to attend the event. And then I got to privately speak with Dr. Hu Len and Ma Bell about trying to find ways to infuse into my music Ho'oponopono. And they gave some very simple tips, which I can go over later, but it really took over the whole form of the way I write music and everything else, because with any art form, whatever it is, I think that in order to resonate and connect with others, it's super important to be working on yourself. And so once you do, I mean, if your vibration comes up, everything in your conscious reality increases with it. That includes the audience, that includes the instruments, that includes the animals. Patty will tell us more. And, you know, So it's been very exciting, and working with Joe, we've done, I think, about 17 projects together. And then we've
Wow.
also co-done some events and created some certification courses for Ho'oponopono also.
Yeah. So there's a great interview that you did recently about Ho'oponopono that people can find on You Are Invincible
Yeah.
podcast. Now, let me also just introduce my good friend, Patricia Raine, artist, illustrator, musician. We played some songs together. I think actually, Patty, I sort of wrote or took some lyrics for one of your birthdays, and we did a song for you. She has many amazing qualities, which I'm sure she'll talk about. But one of the things is that she's studied Ho'oponopono in a very interesting context. And so I think I'd just like to say, also, Patty, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And first sort of question is, do you mind just kind of giving your, from a background of having studied Ho'oponopono and other healing practices, just explain a little bit about that for people who may not know, and then talk about, what your experiences were. I know you had some great time and interesting things involving horses, which you'll have to say, and I can't, obviously. And then how does all this relate to music? I mean, that's one of the things we want to keep bringing back in this conversation is Ho'opono and music. How does it relate? How can we become better musicians by practicing Ho'oponopono? Can we become better people? Well, all these things. I'll open ears. So, Patty, could you tell us what Ho'opono is from your perspective, and explain a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Well, in the mid 90s, I took a break from the East Coast, and I was an illustrator. I did a lot of political caricature, political and social commentary, and needed a break. Went to Boulder, Colorado. And one of the things I did out there was do work with a woman. I also have I've talked about this before we went online. I also have a condition called synesthesia. So I get an immediate color, shape, form, metaphor, impression around people and the sound of their voices, animals, you name it. So I worked with a woman who was doing equine experiential learning. And in that, we did workshops with several people, and the horse would act as a 1,500-pound guru. And depending on how the horse behaved, you knew whether you were lined up, calmed down, in alignment with yourself or not. And the horse would let you know in no uncertain terms where you were out of balance. As one of the things we used, one of the modalities we used was Ho'oponopono. And it was wonderful because when it was utilized, the horse would calm down immediately and come toward the person. The background of Ho'oponopono, which we looked into, is it's from the Polynesian cultures. It was not called Ho'oponopono for a long time until in Hawaii they began to call it that. But it was practiced in Samoa, Vanuatu, Solomon Islands, you name it, as a forgiveness practice that is an untie error rite. You would untie your errors.
Wow.
And it was practiced for millennia. So in Hawaii, they called it Ho'oponopono or Ho'oponopono. Ponopono is the untied. So I got my notes here. I want to make sure I don't miss anything. It was, if you were in error, you would become ill. And so you would practice these rites, and with the tribe. It was very tribal, very root chakra kind of thing. You would practice these rites, and you would be set aright with yourself and your relationship with others. Ho'opono in the Hawaiian dictionary is to put to rights, put in order, shape, correct, revise, adjust, amend, regulate, arrange, rectify, all those things, supervise. And is a mental cleansing, family conferences. They would do Ho'oponopono through prayer, discussion, mutual restitution and forgiveness. So fast forward to the 1970s and the kahuna, Morna Simeona. And she brought the practice and married it with Judeo-Christian principles, Eastern philosophies, and she came up with her prayer.
Mm.
And there are some people now who do her prayer, which starts out, you start out, you know, I completely accept myself. And then you go down using emotional freedom technique. You go down the governing meridian and tap and say, Spirit, superconsciousness, please locate the origin of my feelings and thoughts regarding whatever it is, whatever burden you're carrying. And then you go through 8 points and you tap 8 points. And we would use this modality when we were working with the horses. Our back would be to the horse and we would calm ourselves, and the horse would either bow its head, lick its chops, and show gestures of acceptance and walk toward the person because this was being done. It literally changed the frequency of the person. So this is, again, this is descended from Polynesian cultures. It's also in other tribal cultures. This is pretty classic. That all these things are going on simultaneously and we don't know, until later. So it's quite something. It's quite moving. It's very moving.
Wow, wow. Patricia, do you have Morna's prayer there that you could
Yes,
read?
I do.
That would be great.
You want to read it?
Yeah, please.
All right. First one is you tap the bottom, you start at the tapping at the bottom, top of the head. Spirit, super consciousness, please locate the origin of my feelings and thoughts regarding whatever it is you're carrying, my anger. And then you tap the ajna center, the third eye. Take each and every level, layer, area, and aspect of my being to this origin. And then you tap both hands on the side, the bony structure on the side near the temples. You tap, analyze it, and resolve it perfectly in God's truth. And then you tap your cheekbones, top of your cheekbones. Tap, tap, tap. Come through all generations of time and eternity. And you go under the nose. Healing every incident, its appendages based on the origin, and its appendages based on the origin. Under the mouth. Please do this according to God's will until I am at the present filled with light and truth. And then under the collarbone here. God's peace and love, forgiveness of myself for my incorrect perceptions. And then finally, you go under the arm in the middle of the rib cage and you tap this point and you say forgiveness of every person, place, circumstance, and event which contributed to these feelings and thoughts. And you do that 3 times for whatever concept you're holding about yourself that is out of balance. And anger toward a person. Now what Dr. Hugh Len did, and you probably very aware of this, Matthew, having worked with Joe Vitale, and what Hugh Len did is he consolidated Morna's prayer into, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you.
Mantra.
It's more of a mantra. It's sort of, and you can do that as well as you're doing these governing meridian points. And as we know about Dr. Hugh Len, he, after Morna died in 1992, I think it was, and he and Joe, pardon me?
I think it was was it 92? You're probably right.
Yeah. And that's at the time that Hugh Len and they got together, Joe Vitale I guess they got together or whatever. And that's when Joe wrote his book, I believe. But yeah. In essence, he consolidated it and he used it. The story of Hugh Len is he used it at the Hawaiian State Hospital. And he went through all the files of all the patients there. And instead of interacting with them verbally and trying to do the psychoanalytic and the counseling, he just looked at their photos and looked at their material and said, the fault lies with me. The fault lies with me. The fault is my reaction to this person. So I will dissolve my reaction. I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you, I love you, I'm sorry. And sure enough, the story goes, all the patients got well to one degree or another and left.
Yeah.
It's quite a legendary story.
Patty, I have a question for you. Do you, when you're combining the EFT with Morna's prayer,
Yes.
who came up, where did you come to that? Like whose idea was it to combine the two things together?
There are many healers online who do this. We used to do EFT in the 90s, and we would always combine it with our modalities. It was just a marriage.
It was just
It's a very feminine thing to do.
Actually, Joe and I just released something called the Secret Freedom Protocol. I wasn't involved in the naming of it, but it is all Ho'oponopono with EFT, which we called it HFT.
HFT?
Yeah, that's throughout the videos we say that because it's Ho'oponopono Freedom Technique.
Okay.
And all the different ways to use it, not just on yourself, but to also, if you want to transmit, all kinds of different ideas and different techniques. So
I have
great. I've heard of other people who've done it also.
It's the combination, and I'm telling you, at the end of doing this 3 times, you are chill. It's extraordinary. And that's why I want to dovetail this with going to music. When you go to music, for me, music, it's mathematics. It's timekeeping in a very esoteric way.
The dance of numbers, yeah.
It's the dance of numbers, man. Every chord progression is an equation for me.
Yes.
It's an equation. And the Ho'oponopono prayer is an equation. It's a kind of equation. And it seeks its own resolution. That's what music does. It seeks its own resolution. You do chords, you all suss all over the place, and then you come to resolution. Yeah. And that's what Ho'oponopono does. I think of you, Roy, as a percussionist. I think of you as the heart of the orchestra. You keep time. You keep time. And it's extraordinary. If violins are the backbones, percussion is the heart.
Yeah, and the whole mystery of rhythm too is when you keep speeding up rhythm and time, it becomes pitch. So actually pitch and time are actually linked. There's a link. But I did want to chime in when you were talking about Joe Vitale meeting Dr. Hugh Lin. The whole thing was around this mythic story that he learned about this Hawaiian guy that went to a criminally insane mental ward, and they ended up shutting the place down. And he was like, this is Joe Vitale, right? He's like, I've got to find out I got to find the guy. Does the guy really exist? And then find out what he did. And every time he finally found Dr. Hugh Lin, and Hugh Lin would just say, thank you, love you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And just leave it at that. He's like, Joe Vitale wouldn't let that go. He said, there's gotta be more. You gotta be, and he says, Dr. Hugh Lin said, look, you don't even have to believe it. Just practice it. And Joe Vitale wouldn't let it go. Until finally he invited him to, I think it was Austin, Texas. He says, look, I'm just going to invite a few people. We're going to sit down and just try to get him to tell more of what he did, right? And I learned about it. And I stopped everything to be there. So I was there, right? When the book Zero Limits came out, I'm reading the book Zero Limits. I'm like, wait a minute. He's talking about the group, that small group that was there to meet Dr. Hugh Lin, right? And the thing was, it's like he was a different kind of guy, man. You have to remember, he said he learned from his teacher, Morna. But when he heard Morna talk, he couldn't even sit through her presentation. I think he walked out 2 times or 3 times because it sounded so foolish what she was saying. Right. So when I tell people about it, I said, look, you got to kind of go into your Dr. Seuss mode. Horton hears a who. You know what I mean? The
it's
rocks
green eggs and ham, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the rocks are really listening. The chairs, he said, are listening. They know who's sitting in it. He said the room had a name. And the room said, no one's ever addressed me by my name before. Right? I said, but I just tell people, look, you got to open your mind. You know, you got to open your mind, because at the end of the day, that whole criminally insane ward, everybody got better.
Everybody got better.
Yeah. I mean, just to give you a sense of the balance, because I think Dr. Hugh Lynn says he believes that Morna was overshadowing, because if this was a movie, she was the one that assigned him and told him what his assignment was, and she told him when it was over. So there's like, whoa, who is this lady?
He's retired now, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Morna is a kahuna. Was a kahuna, a real, for sure, kahuna. And Hugh Lynn was very humble and went on, kept saying, no, I'm not a kahuna. I'm a student of Morna, and was very humble in his presentation, but his consolidation of her prayer was quite something.
So I have another version of this Morna's prayer, which I think, Roy, this is the one you may be familiar with. Divine Creator, Father, Mother, Son as one. If I, my family, relatives, and ancestors have offended you, your family, relatives, and ancestors, in thoughts, words, deeds, and actions, from the beginning of our creation to the present, we ask your forgiveness. Let this cleanse, purify, release, cut all the negative memories, blocks, energies, and vibrations, and transmute these unwanted energies into pure light, and it is done. It's pretty powerful.
Yes.
To just ask Mathew, how did you get into this? I mean, how did you sort of, you told us briefly, but how has it been? You met Joe Vitale, you know, how has it, the Ho'oponopono, been changing the music that you've been playing or affecting it? And what have you seen in your life, or people who listen to your music, and how do you tie these two together? I just really like to get your perspective on this.
Well, as I said, I read the book Zero Limits, and I was reminded of this when Roy was talking, that I was about halfway through the book. I remember sitting out on my back porch and I was reading it. I was thinking, I think I'm getting this. And then I started the next chapter and I went, what? I slammed the book closed. I'm like,
I'm out of here.
Yeah, I'm like, too much. Too much right now. You know? I hit my limit. I was spilling over the top. I had to wait a little bit. So, but once I digested it, got back to it. Several things. In the music, one of the first things was the event that I was telling you that I played at, which was Zero Limits 3, which was also in Austin. But that was 3 times after, because there was, I think, one was in Maui and somewhere else, and there was the initial one that you were at, Roy. Mm-hmm. When Dr. Son, even getting there was a process for me, because number one, couldn't really afford to go. So it was out of my price range at the time. So that's why I contacted, when I say I got to play, I had written Joe, who I had met twice before, and said, could I perform during lunch and dinner and attend the event for free? Next day, it wrote, sold out. I went, oh man. So I remember taking the trash out to the curb. It was nighttime, looked up, and I said, set my intention. I want to go to this event, even though I already knew it was sold out. And then I cleaned, and then I let it go. Then he opened it up, he doubled the event, or they did. And he said, you're on, you're in, we got you down. So just getting there was a big thing. So in the meet and greet, a lot of these events, you have a first meet and greet. At the first meet and greet, what happened is once Dr. Len walked in the room, it was the equivalent of a rock star walking in the room. I mean, everybody, I mean, a lot of people were there to see Joe, of course, and he was kind of the rock star, Houlihan was kind of like, woo, you know, I mean, everybody was at, I'm sitting playing. He walks right past everybody, walks right up, says, I had to find out what that music was. I thought it was being played over a stereo at first. He goes, that music is Ho'oponopono. And I was thinking,
Wow.
that's what I've been trying to achieve. So
Wow.
later, when I did get to speak to him privately, I said, I'm looking for ways to infuse Ho'oponopono into my music. What are things that I can do beyond just studying it naturally? And number one was, he said, subliminally say the mantra underneath. He says, that's perfect because the subconscious mind is going to hear it. It's going to do cleaning. So whatever's being cleaned in the subconscious mind comes up into the conscious reality. And that's where we get all of this, including the desk and the computers and what we're doing right now, right? So that was the first start. And then from there, I had a situation where I was sitting and writing a piece, and it came to me so easily. And I actually entitled the piece Zero Limits. And when I wrote the piece, I remember being off the phone with my mom, and I said, man, I really think I'm getting this writing thing down. This thing just flooded out. And I said, I could feel it was Ho'oponopono, and it was great. And I can't wait. I'm going to put it out. I'm going to sell it on iTunes or whatever the deal is. And then this voice was coming to me going, no, you're not going to sell it. You're going to give it away. You need to give it away.
Mm.
I was like, oh man, I don't want to give it away.
Give it away. Oh man.
I need to make money so I can go to these events. Right? So I still do to this day. On my webpage, you go, there's free music and you can get the song for free. Now it did get put into albums because it started to inspire the first album I did with Joe, which was called Aligning to Zero. And we followed the frequencies of the chakras. The whole entire album is at the same exact mellow tempo, so it never alters. And we infused it for the first time with Joe saying the mantra underneath. And that was our first step. The reaction was overwhelming. I mean, people just really resonated to it. And I think that's a big part of it. Like I was saying, you raise your vibration, everybody raises, you know, not to say you can't make something great and be in a horrible place. It's just horrible isn't always horrible too. That's just an interpretation, you know? So it's gone all the way down to the way that Joe and I started recording music, even in the studio, which is, as we know as musicians, when you improvise, you're basically composing, but you're just composing on the fly, right? There's no takebacks. Well, we try to bring as much of that into the studio as possible also. So a lot of times, you know, there'll be some type of a bed track laid down, but then we just try to hear what is coming to us. We clean, we do breathing techniques beforehand, 7-count breathing. For those of you who don't know what 7-count breathing is, it's basically you count in 7 breaths, hold for 7, exhale for 7, and hold for 7, and do it 7 times. It's also called Ha breathing, sometimes referred to as Ho breathing. So it's just a great way to kind of balance yourself. I do it all the time. So that in itself has just changed so much. And then we've started to incorporate meditations. Like I said, most recently, we brought the EFT in and combined that, which we've been working on since 2016. That's when we started practicing the different techniques. And
wow, pretty profound.
that's it.
Roy, what are you thinking? I know you got something to say.
Yeah, there's a couple of things, man. It's like the thing that was so beautiful about when Joe Vitale he found Dr. Houlihan and just pulled him out of obscurity just to come and meet a few people. And they said they didn't expect but maybe a few people, 7, maybe 10, and there was about 30 to 50 of us there. And he was not a rock star at the time, right? He was just this weird.
Where was this, Roy?
I can't remember what the year is. I have to look at Zero Limits. Whatever Zero Limits is about that meeting.
Okay.
Zero Limits is about that meeting. Because I'm reading the book. I'm going, wait a minute, I was there.
Put it on there.
I actually have my own video of it, right? And so he wasn't a rock star. He was this weird guy, but it's like he had accomplished something so phenomenal that it was almost mythical, but he would barely say anything about it. I mean, to get him to say the next thing was like, and that's what I give it to Joe Vitale. Joe Vitale, super marketer. They got processes. They know how to explain stuff. You know, if they can explain it, they can market it and get it out there. And so Joe would just ask these questions. And I didn't realize when Joe writes about it in his book, Joe talks about how small he felt because he's a millionaire marketer. I know everything, right? And Ho'oponopono is saying, well, wow, I wasn't really totally correct. And Dr. Hugh Lynn would tell him, don't worry about it. He says, as you get better, your audience gets better because it's all in you. When I walked in the place before the meeting even started, I talked to him about music. I said, I'm a musician and I want to apply this to my music and this kind of thing. And how does it affect the world? He says, just remember, he said, he pointed at my solar plexus. He said, it's all in you. You know what I mean? He said, there is no out there. And the only reason for people listening where I can really make it make sense is like every time you dream, if you dream a nightmare and you concentrate on the nightmare, that's not where it's all happening. Your whole dream, you have to look back into the dreamer. And it seemed like what he was saying is that our reality is like more of the nature of a dream that we're dreaming. And to affect the dream and the nightmare out there is not to reach out to the nightmare. It's to reach back into the dreamer. See what I'm saying? And so on this thing about music, I feel like I never talked about this much, but I play with Bela Fleck and the Flecktones. I play drums, tapping on instruments like this is a prototype, right? This is a prototype, but it looks like it's a guitar, but I'm tapping on pads.
The drumitar?
Like the drumitar, it's like a drum guitar, right?
Yeah.
And so I learned to play the drums this way, right? And then I wanted to get all the notes. So I laid it down and I created a keyboard version. Now I created my own keyboard. And from that, it was an experiment where I was literally looking at what Patricia said. I was looking at the beautiful math, the numbers, right? And I could take dynamics and play from soft to loud and have the notes split. The notes would split as I played harder. It's almost like a trumpet. If you play trumpet, you play one note. If I played this armature, I can get 4 different notes depending on how I change my armature. So by changing dynamics, I could change the pitch. Long story short, I was pretending with myself that I didn't know anything. I'm just like, look, I'm just a zero guy, man. This is before I knew about Ho'oponopono. But I said, I'm just walking in the room, man. I don't know anything, right? But I laid out this grid and man, the only thing that I did, right, is I would just press record and just see what would happen. And from those recordings, I did not know what I was doing, but I did lay out this grid where I was splitting the notes 4 times and I had a dance of intervals that made sense. But consciously, I didn't know what was going on. But from those recordings came my whole symphonic work of the Black Mozart, right? Yeah. And The Secret of Kings. 2 whole symphonic works. And there's another batch of symphonic work that came from that first maybe month or 2 months of just sitting down, putting my hands down, like putting them on a Ouija board and playing my rhythms and stuff and listening to the melodies coming out. My point is, Dr. Hugh Lynn talked about with Ho'oponopono, when we're cleaning, when he gives you that little mantra, you don't even believe in it. He said it's activating a part of us that's connecting to a higher part of us. And it's almost like we're letting go just enough for a higher part of ourselves to be invited down. Just like Patricia said, the horse then can bow its head as you chill out. As your ego kind of chills out, it invites, what it says, reality doesn't like a vacuum. So it creates space for another part of yourself to come down. So all this music, man, came out of nowhere, man. It sounds like I'm a genius, man. But I didn't know anything. That was my mantra. I don't know anything. Like I'm zero limits, right? And whoa, 2-3 symphonic works come out that. So I'm saying this, how it connects to music is you can read entire books, Beethoven, Mozart, Haydn, all of these composers talking about how their music came to them and they were just catching the notes. You know what I mean? It's not like they were creating it. He said we were just catching it. It was coming. The whole thing, right? And a lot of them, Brahms, everybody, and a lot of them said, don't write about this until we're dead because it sounds too religious. Right? I can't think of the name of the book right now, but if you kind of Google, you'll see composers talking about this music is coming from another place. And I believe it is this Ho'oponopono place where there's a higher part of ourselves that's connecting to our subconscious and our whole reality, where you know that you didn't come up with it. When I did those notes, I know that it wasn't really me. See what I mean? I know it was another part of me. So that's kind of how I wanted to connect that.
So can I comment on what Roy just said?
Go ahead. Yeah.
I wanted to comment on that because, for instance, when I was saying I wrote the Zero Limits song, that was the feeling like, hey, I think I'm getting the hang of this. In Ho'oponopono, the way it's been broken down is that the mind works in 3 different states. And so they have the 0 state. The thing about the 0 state is, once you're in the 0 state, you're out of it before you even know it. We want to get to the 0 state because the 0 state goes to the 2nd state, which is where we really want to be able to hang out. And that is from inspiration, kind of like you're saying.
Yes.
You're just, all the composers, everybody, and that's how it's relating to music is, it's not you writing it, it's you kind of channeling it, and then you get to put your name on it, you know, which is the bonus.
Right.
Then the 3rd state of mind is when you fall into the 3rd state, which is now you're dealing with data, and with data comes ego and comes all of those things that take you out of the inspiration. But if you pull yourself, and that's what the cleaning is all about, and that simple mantra, just those 4 phrases, and even the new 5th phrases that are coming out, it's getting, just tap that 0 point so you can get that 2nd state of mind and follow inspiration. And a lot of times following inspiration is a little scary. And that's when that's what I'm usually noticing. I'm always like, I'm gonna respect the process, but boy, this scares me. But I want to hang out here as long as I can.
I wanted to comment. Oh,
Good, Patty.
this used to be called the muse visiting.
Yes.
The visitation of the muse. And then in Greek studies, there were 9 muses, and they governed all the arts, music, science, you name it. And Calliope was the 9th muse, and she was the most beautiful and the chief muse. So that's how the Greeks would describe their reverie. And literally going from stepping stone to stepping stone, you're going from one now to the next now, to the next now, to the next. And having the resilience and the fortitude, and you've got to be really lined up to sustain that now. Sustain what now is, because you don't have any control. That's what you were talking about, Matthew, about being out of feeling scary. I'll talk from the femme perspective. Femme, the yin perspective. The yin is the dark. The yin is you wait. It's like gestation, 9 months. Gestation of an idea, gestation of a musical composition. And I did a flurry. I had a flurry of songs come through because I was in the mode. The muse was visiting, but it's a gestational period. You don't peek. You don't look. You leave it alone. You leave it in the dark. And that's what's scary to a lot of people. It's now to now to now. And your attention is just hyper. And then you're out of the reverie. And you've got to be okay with being out of the reverie. You've got to be okay with standing back. Einstein knew this. Euclid knew this. Every scientist knew this. Every musician knew this. Scriabin, all these guys. They would wait. And Dylan went through a period, Bob Dylan went through a period where he said the muse wasn't visiting. Just wasn't visiting for whatever reason. For him, he had a dearth of creativity.
I have a question for all 3 of you, actually, maybe quickly. I have found, and I do notice, and I don't know if it's just in my work and where I'm at, but if I trust the process completely. The ones that scare me the most, I'm pretty much guaranteed that I will immediately be challenged afterwards with other things in my life. So like if I go and spend a lot of money on a guitar, pretty guaranteed my air conditioner is going to go out and I'm going to have to spend money on that. Now, in the beginning, I'd be like, oh, and now I'm like, oh yeah, go ahead and try and scare me. Still going. Do you guys get any of that at all?
Yes.
Okay, good. As long as I'm not the only one.
It's called well, they used to call it in tribal culture, the trickster visits.
Yes, yeah.
If you go into a deep reverie, you're in, and even the I Ching talks about this, you don't want to be in excessive joy or an excessive reverie, because the trickster will visit and say,
keep the balance, right?
Exactly.
Makes sense.
So you get it, but again, to talk about the outer condition, saying it's like stubbing your toe, it's like to get your attention.
Yeah.
Like, okay, just calm down. Calm down.
Warnings.
This is the real world here.
So Roy, when after you learned about Ho'oponopono, I mean, you've been playing professionally for quite some time. Did that knowledge affect what you were doing? Did it change your music? Did it affect what you were playing, or was it more confirmation?
I think it was kind of like confirmation on some of the things. I can't remember if I was coming up with this this music, but echoing what Patricia and Matthew was saying, when I was creating this music out of nothing, right? One thing I remember, I would just always say, I'm just gonna pretend like I don't know anything. I mean, I know that I know something, but it's like in my mind, I'm saying, I'm just gonna put what I know and just put it on the bookshelf and come at this zero, like I don't know anything, right? And from that, when Patricia talked about being at attention, I would just put my hands on these keyboards and start playing, and right away, like, whoa, something was happening. So I got my digital DAT tape, and I would just hit play before I would start. But I had to wrestle my conscious mind, because it seemed like I didn't have anything. And even sometimes while I was playing, it seemed like nothing was happening until I would go back and listen to it. See what I'm saying? So I had to have the faith to just let it happen. And if I literally would start playing and stop to turn on the tape recorder, I would lose it. I couldn't stop. I had to let it finish. See what I'm saying?
The key, and they used to say, the key is not to get over dazzled with yourself.
Yeah, because really, but I'm gonna say at the same time, you almost have to step out, because I would be under dazzled. While I was doing it, it would seem like, well, I wouldn't record this. It's like, it doesn't really seem like it happened. If I would maybe stop the recorder, right? But when I would listen back to it, whoa, everything made sense. But that I didn't catch it while it was happening. See what I'm saying? So it's like
that's something.
Yeah, I would have to like not judge it at all. Just let it happen. And the only thing was me, the ego person, just had the foresight. I had to have the foresight to just hit record. Go. Hit record and go.
Then you become void of anticipation, right?
Yeah, because I would really be thinking nothing's going to happen.
If you were hearing what you were doing, that would have disrupted if you got excited about it. Kind of like
I wasn't getting excited.
But instead, you didn't have to worry about it because you got ears over here doing it for you, and then you go back and go, whoa.
Right. But if there was kind of a ritual thing where I'm inviting that higher self, that was when I was starting to get up like 3:30 or 4 in the morning, because my life was kind of busy. I think I was in a relationship and I needed time where the world wasn't awake yet. And so I was getting up like 3:30, 4 in the morning and spending like 3-4 hours just let's invite in, and so in that time it allowed this communication to happen. And literally
I have a couple little things I want to mention, and then we'll see if anybody has questions. But one of the things that really struck me in reading Zero Limits, and I talk about it in my own book, Heaven is Everywhere, was Hugh Len says, if there's any issues out there, if there's any problems, you realize that you're there and you have a sort of a responsibility. You're the one who can fix them. And it can be overwhelming to think in a way that if there's a problem that I have in a relationship or in my job or in the world, like, government or whatever, I'm the one who can fix it. And it's a little bit overwhelming until you realize, well, if I can just do the cleaning. Now, I tend to say, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. I like to start off that way. And I guess it doesn't really matter, but I feel that it works in relationships, in things that you're doing. You can say this to a tree, you can say it to a person, you can say it to a horse. You're sort of cleaning yourself and making yourself open to it and that responsibility. But it does, I think there are other teachings that say, it only takes one teacher to change the world. It only takes one person. If you want to be that change you want to be Gandhi. Don't just try to be better. Be, go the whole way. So I think that's a pretty important point. But I also wanted to relate this thing that happened to me. So I was asleep one night, and I've been thinking that one of the things in this pandemic that has really been the greatest lesson for me is gratitude. Just wow, we can't get around and do whatever we can do, but now we realize how much we had and just the gratefulness that we have. And I've also kind of thought sometimes about those 4, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, that it's maybe doesn't focus enough on gratitude. So I was asleep one night and I woke up and this came into my brain. It was sort of like, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I'm grateful for you, I appreciate and adore you. I was like, wow. I got my phone out and I went in the bathroom so not to wake up Missy, and I went, and I just kind of put it down, and it, there's such, we tend to think about Ho'oponopono in a way of being, about forgiveness, and in a lot, and forgiveness is so important, but that gratitude part, thank you, is bigger than thank you. It's almost adoration, and it's a little bit hard, I find, I can say to a tree, I adore you, or I can say to the world, I adore you, but it's hard to say sometimes to another person or to everybody. So there's different aspects to that, and I'm just sitting around waiting for it to help out my music, because I didn't start that long ago, but I sure do love just learning more about the power of music and hopefully what it can bring to us all.
But that's a great point, because I just know after listening to Dr. Hugh Lin how he talked about having gratitude for the problem itself, because like in mathematics, you need a good problem to solve in order to get to that equal sign. So a lot of times mathematicians, they're just grateful for a problem. Wow. You know what I mean? Like, wow, I've got this juicy problem because there's an equal sign if we figure it out. And so they talk about the problems themselves coming as gifts. And you can establish a type of gratitude towards the problem. So much so, I just want to keep, for people listening, to keep knowing this is going to challenge your reality, because like there was a head NASA people that were coming to Dr. Hugh Lin to practice Ho'oponopono on a malfunctioning satellite. And Joe Vitale was just like, you know what I mean? There's no way that we're going to fix a malfunctioning satellite. You can't do it. But the satellite got fixed. And Joe Vitale said, and they think Ho'oponopono solved it. So see what I'm saying? This is where we are. This is something that's beyond, what our reality says.
And it's a story after it happened. What seemed like a huge problem to NASA wasn't necessarily a huge problem after all.
Yes.
And it helps the rest of us kind of accept and works with our faith to do more. One of the things I'm going to say about gratitude is I have a handful of private clients that I communicate with daily. And with every one of them, I recommend a gratitude journal, because the thing about Ho'oponopono is you never know if what's going on is actually helping until you kind of catch up and get to see afterwards and look back and go, it worked. So I always recommend that you write those down, because when you do get into those situations, and we all have them, where we get sad, we get melancholy, we don't want to get out of bed that day, we're upset about something. You go back and you read those. You read your own writings of your own personal experiences. And that's how I like to lock onto gratitude, is keeping a gratitude journal.
Nice, nice. Patricia, you were getting ready to say something.
Oh, yeah, about gratitude. I agree. The thank you sometimes doesn't feel like enough.
Right.
But what's implicit in a thank you, if it's consciously directed and really actively given, is there's gratitude within that thank you. I was going to say the difficulties with all forgiveness practices. Matthew talked about this gratitude, and Roy, and your dream is wonderful because you had a visitation from the muse, Jeff. And just add this extra vibe and add this extra wave and follow your particle and go up to the wave, the top, but it completed something for you. The difficulty with certain forgiveness practices and even gratitude journals and saying this is that if we cease to realize that this is a projection out here, as you said, Roy, the dream, we are the dreamer. We are also the projector. We are also projectees. We get projected onto us, and we project onto others. Who's on first, as Abbott and Costello said? Sometimes it's very difficult to forgive the unforgivable. And there's things going on in this world that are so unforgivable. And this is where I'm dovetailing with music, where I have a difficult time forgiving, and I feel like I have forgiven, but clearly something in me is still disturbed. And I'm still projecting that thing out there has attacked me. And so I really have to take myself to task. And that's when I go to music, because it's pre-verbal, it's non-verbal. It's, as I was saying to you, Roy, the equation. I go to the chord progression, my chord progression is, there's a certain chord progression I follow my own beat. I go A to D to G and then E minor. A to D to G, and then I suss it all. And then it's a certain pattern that I follow, and that resolves it for me in a non-verbal, pre-verbal, infantile, in the womb way. So that I don't have to put in front of me the picture of the person who has wronged me and say, I'm sorry, please forgive me. I'm sorry. There's this indignation, and people talk about this all the time, this indignation that overtakes you. And so the degree to which you feel indignation, for me, that's when I turn to music. And then I can go back. And so the music does it for me. It puts me in a mode whereby I can calm down and then go back to the practice, the verbal practice, and feel an incremental release of the fist. Because the fist will not give until, you have to use all the modalities you can, as you were saying, Matthew, gratitude, all those things. Sometimes they don't work. And for me, when they don't work, I go to music. I go to music. I go to the nonverbal. I go to music and horses.
But wow, you said something so powerful, that release of the fist. Because I want to send it out there that when people start practicing Ho'oponopono, the trickster will show up and give you an example that you don't know. So just real quick, when I was practicing Ho'oponopono, the first trickster I got, this was back in MySpace. And this guy kept writing in MySpace, putting porno stuff, advertising for porno sites. And I kept writing to dude saying, look, man, I'm a musician. I got fans. I can't have you advertising porno stuff. Stop. And then it come back again. So now my fist is up. I'm getting ready to like, yo, dude, this is what's up, man. Boom. But I said, let me stop. Let me practice it Ho'oponopono way. Dude, thank you, for being a fan, being on my side. I'm really sorry for this misunderstanding. I love you, and I'm sorry for, I just tried to do it through Ho'oponopono, and I'm getting ready to slam him and execute him from my site. And as I'm going to push the button, I see on MySpace there's his friend saying, dude, you got a virus attached to you. You got a virus. Everything you're sending to me has got porno to it. And I went, oh, I got it. I don't know everything. And that released the fist. Right? I didn't know he had a virus attached to him. Right? And to this day, I would have thought that he was just being out of hand. See what I'm saying? But Ho'oponopono showed me, dude, you don't have all the information. And that's what Dr. Hugh Lynn kept saying. We're like an 8-bit computer. And the universe is gigabytes and trigabytes, you know what I mean? We don't have it. And so we have to like just back off and release the fist a little bit and allow another part to come. And he said there's a higher part that can solve any problem, like erasing a problem on a chalkboard. You know, you're working on a problem, you know, you need an eraser sometimes. Oh, I made a mistake, right? He said there's a part of us that can erase it, that's connected to all the different parts. So that released the fist. That made my day right there.
But that's it, because that's how I construe it. And you mentioned virus. You mentioned. I think of this feeling that we have that it's coming to us, and it's very difficult because when you're talking about small children, at what point from age 1 to 5 are they responsible? You know, I mean, that's where it gets kind of dicey. You have to. You have to go into your experience. How are you responsible? You're responsible simply by the fact that you exist. But for me, what you were talking about was a parasite. It's something parasitic. And that's what I feel that this malaise that affects us, the feeling of being attacked and wanting to push back and everything, it's a malaise, it's parasitic. There's a parasitic quality to it. And it has to be recognized. And that's why I think we're going through this virus thing right now.
Yeah, there's some healing going on.
It's almost like nature is saying, okay, parasite, you want a parasite? You want a virus? I'll show you, you know.
Right.
I'll show you what's really going on with your psyche.
Hey, if anybody, there goes my bird clock. We're got a few more minutes. If anybody who's non-video here wants to ask a question, just put something in the chat so we know, or come on video. Roy, you have something to say there?
I just want to say one thing. It's going to be a little bit controversial. I've got about 15 minutes, but responding to what you were saying, Patricia, about, you know, kids come in and they've just gotten here. But the key, I think, that what we got to look at is, like, I was just watching these YouTubes where kids are coming in and they remember who they were before. They remember, like, sometimes it's the mother. Like, I just watched one. You can YouTube kids remembering past lives, right?
Wow.
She was the mother. She remembered dying and leaving all her kids. So she's in her other body and remembers her kids, and she goes and seeks out all the kids that she left from another life, right? She finds them all, and they say they know it was her because it's only them, and the mom would know this. See what I'm saying? Right. So when we're talking Ho'oponopono, to me, the key is, like, this didn't just start. This problem didn't just start. And that's what Warner's saying, going back, if I or my ancestors.
Exactly.
Right.
Right. There was another one where the lady, the husband had killed her, and she was a young girl, and she remembered, she went back and met the person that killed her in the other life. See what I'm saying? So it's like, it's not totally blank slates going on here.
I know. Well, here's what's interesting, Roy. In the I Ching studies and philosophy, they believe that you come in as a blank slate, that there is no karma. So there's a whole philosophy, a whole Eastern philosophy that doesn't, you know, I mean, there's a karmic.
Yes.
That if indeed we come in new, renewed, what are we coming into? And from my theory is, and this dovetails with music and pre-verbal and non-verbal stuff, my theory is we come into a bandwidth of frequency. You're on a bandwidth of indigo, you know, you guys, I'm on a bandwidth of yellow and red. There's a certain bandwidth of frequency. And on that bandwidth, it's like what they call the Akashic records. Everything that has ever happened since the beginning of time in human concept is there. And I think we come in and we can apprehend or catch or remember things that we didn't necessarily experience in a past life, but we're experiencing now. Mm. And incrementally, we can heal up those bandwidths of energy that I mean, that's my theory.
No,
that's what
And that's beautiful because Dr. Ibrahim Karim with biogeometry, he talks about how our realities are like notes on a piano. When you hit this note, all the notes rebound. And so what we're doing here is creating sympathetic resonance. Like we hit a tuning fork and all the sympathetic resonance in the other dimensions, other times are being affected. So that's beautiful what you're saying.
Yeah, and I'm here looking for my lost chord.
Morna referred to it as the Akka chord.
Oh, right.
And the Akka chord is like, as we sit here, just four of us, it's the chord that ties us all together, which is why we're all experiencing this together. And then from that, it just keeps going, right? It's like roots below a tree, just keeps going out and out and out.
Right.
So yeah, the Akka chord.
That's nice.
Ties everything together. So even as I say, I'm cleaning for what's within myself, and you're all saying that you're cleaning what's within yourself. We're all cleaning what's within the one, the I.
Yeah. And then I remember, this reminds me, at that meeting, Dr. Hugh Lin said, and our conscious mind can't grasp, because he says we'll be practicing Ho'oponopono here. And it was shown to him how somebody was having an easier pregnancy in another part of the world as a result of what we were practicing here. Now he says, how do we know how that's hooked up? We don't.
Right.
You know? And he said, but we just practice it because there's a greater self that's untying the knots, that's working this thing out. It's bigger than us, you know.
Wow. So this is it's just a fantastic conversation. It's amazing. There's so many different layers. About to wrap up, I'd like to just say, from my perspective, you know, music is so powerful. I mean, we are music, you know, the ultimate reality of sound, the space, the zero, the nod. And it's such a healing thing for us, and can be really for the world, and we can kind of heal the world. And Ho'oponopono, and I think the reason why, you know, Victor always wants to talk about it at the camps, and Roy is so into it, et cetera, is because it kind of ties together with that. It's something that helps us in that quest for us to be better people and to, you know, create better things. So I'm so thankful for everybody. But any final comments you want to make? I know Roy's got to go, but boy, this has been fabulous.
Patricia was just getting ready to say something.
Go ahead, Patty.
Oh, I forgot what I was going to say. What were we talking about?
Anybody else? There's so many, it's all over the place.
I lost my now.
A pregnancy in another part of the world was getting affected.
I was going to say something. I was going to talk about Rupert Sheldrake. Are you familiar with him? Rupert Sheldrake. He's a Brit. He conceived of the concept of morphogenic resonance, which is whatever's going on in one part of the world is going on in another part of the world in some other fashion. And he did all kinds of experiments about this. And that's what I was saying early on, these forgiveness practices in tribes, and there are various kinds of, were going on in various points of the world, unbeknownst to the participants.
Wow.
It was all part of this collective, unconscious tone poem that's going on regarding forgiveness and setting things aright, you know. And check out Rupert Sheldrake. He's fascinating. And morphogenic resonance.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else, Matthew, before we go?
No, I've really enjoyed this.
Me too.
No.
I would just put out there, you know, I mentioned Dr. Ibrahim Karim. If you look up biogeometry, he talks about how these different dimensions connect. And I would just like to say there's an intersect between all of this spirit and our technology that's coming. So even as we're dealing with viruses and stuff, Dr. Ibrahim Karim says how viruses and stuff can actually be projected as a signal, like a radio signal. See what I'm saying? So we're dealing with stuff that's it's technology and it's spiritual at the same time. And this is like an ultimate spiritual machine, organism going on.
Organism.
Yeah, organism. And so, you know, organized system, you know, and we're on a hero's journey, and it's a worthwhile journey.
Yes.
So keep your minds open. And when you get into Ho'oponopono, just think Dr. Seuss. Just keep your mind open like you fairy tale. But a lot of times fairy tales are closer to it than fact. So that's what I'm going to send out there. You know, that there's a realm of magicness to this. So.
Yeah, and what I'll send out, Roy, is something you talked about at Wooten Woods last time. Who is it who says it? Truth and experimenting.
Oh, Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah, and so that's what we've been doing here at Planetary Gigs Society. You know, we set up the International Music Ashram. We're doing Planetary Gig Talk Live. We're doing planetary music projects. We're just throwing it out there, having faith in the power of music, having faith in all of us. The truth, and just see what you can do. So, you know, truth and experimenting can be a pretty good mantra as well.
And to continue on that, this is Ping June saying, a lot of times people talk about putting out realistic goals. He says, I think you should try putting out dumb goals, where U is for unrealistic. You know what I mean? He says anything that sort of moved and impacted the world was unrealistic. You know, airplane, space travel. Dr. Hugh Lin, they're fixing satellites, and you know, what is this? You know what I mean? It's unrealistic goals. Right? So and then that whole this whole thing of Gary Vaynerchuk saying people are trying to take it to the next level, getting on the internet, putting their content out there. And he told this leading Instagram dude, look, you want to take your stuff to the next level? I think you should put out videos that you know won't do well. And the dude is like, what? Yes, that won't do well. And then this guy says, put it up. Tell me why. Why? And he says, because everyone's trying to be so perfect, right? He says, what we need is more truth and authenticity and experimenting. And then that's what's going to bring it to the next thing. You know what I mean? People are afraid to experiment truth. You know what I mean? And this, I'm going to leave this, but when George Lucas was doing Star Wars, man, this guy was experimenting, man. These guys were making up the world that we use now. Digital editing, non-linear digital editing, Pro Tools, Final Cut Pro, they made that stuff up, man. Right? And the more successful he get, he would risk, right? And then Disney gets it, right? And they're trying to package what he did, and they're not experimenting.
And then the problem comes when you start to package, when you start to institutionalize anything, you lose the now, you lose the authenticity often. Right. And that's what you've got to walk that fine line if you're going to put it out there. That's why Hugh Lin was so humble.
Yes.
I'm not the
same leader. If everybody follows the same leader, eventually you get bored.
Right.
Yeah.
Carl Jung was not a Jungian. Christ was not a Christian. He was an original.
Yeah.
They were originals.
That's beautiful. Yes.
Yep. Just so we'll all just be that peace and love out there.
I have one quick question
Sure.
for Roy that's for the listeners, but mostly I have the question for myself, which is the camps is it Wooten? What do you call it? Is it Wooten Camp or Wooten Ranch?
You can look up Wooten Woods and Vic's Camps, I think, with a VIX.
Vic's Camps.
Do you know, is there a camp that would be most related to the topics that we've been speaking on today?
Spirit of Music.
Spirit of Music Camp.
One, man, the Spirit of Music, and he's been having them online, so tune in.
You know, we did one online in the spring. I heard you say when I was at Music and Nature Camp about 2 years ago, you said Spirit of Music is my favorite, and that's when I said I'm going to Spirit of Music.
Yes, and
it's fabulous. So yeah, people check out Victor Wooten's Center for Music and Nature, Wooten Woods. It's really worth doing. Just some beautiful stuff going on.
And can I say one thing too on that? Because a lot of times I'll end that, and as we sort of wrap this up, I want to leave this out there. We're in a world right now where I'm an artist. The arts business has been shut down from like mega to zero, and you'll see advertisements where, like in Britain, they're saying, you know, artists need to think about getting a new trade. Like there's no value for what the arts represents to society. But I want to say that every great civilization had their great arts that sort of inspired them to go where they're trying to go, right? So I want to leave this idea. if you think about it, you're just a little art and you think that isn't anything. When we look back in history, I can ask a whole crowd, how many of you out there listening to this have heard of Mozart? And if I could see you, a bunch of you guys have heard of Mozart. How many people have heard of Beethoven? You remember who Beethoven was, right? Now I'm going to ask you, who was the president during Mozart's time? Who was the king? Who was running? You can barely remember who it was.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Okay. Who was the king during Beethoven's time? You can barely remember who it was. And every once in a while, there'll be like an encyclopedia dude that knows who it was. I said, okay, tell me, what did that king do? Right? You can't tell me what the person did. But every day, somebody's playing what Mozart wrote down. What Beethoven wrote down means something to us now. Okay? So I'm just trying to give you the scale of the arts is a gift to this world. And so as society right now, COVID, they're trying to tell you that you're non-essential. All the orchestra people are furloughed. I have something to say about that.
Yeah.
That's a conversation. If people want to continue, man, find me online at Facebook, my Rhythm Hackers group, Facebook group, because I have something to say about that. How the arts is what's going to lead us through this thing. You can't have a movie without a soundtrack, right? And we're in an epic movie right now.
We're in an epic arts movie. Actually leave something behind.
Yes.
Because even your examples there, how old are they?
Yes.
So what's happening right now, how old will it be when they refer to it then?
Yeah.
Yes, good point.
It's so significant because if they were businesses, their businesses would still be thriving. Their music just went in the public domain. See what I mean? But if you still had to pay for their music, those businesses would still be thriving from like so long ago. There's not a whole lot of businesses that you could say that about. See what I mean? I mean, they wrote something so profound. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying the artists, people that are working on their art, don't let COVID and people telling you that you're non-essential, don't believe it. You know what I mean? Because it's the artists that can put us into perspective. And all we need a lot of times is just the right phrase, the right song that gives a little bit of hope. All these Japanese people that killed themselves in October, they go to the forest to kill themselves because their hope has been drowned out. See what I mean? Our artists can maybe say one little thing that says, oh, okay, this is the hero's journey that we're in right now. You know, and we got a problem. And with Ho'oponopono and things like that, all their techniques and all our philosophers have given us tools to untie this knot. You know what I mean? Like you said in the beginning, it was so beautiful.
I'm just saying the artist's art always has a more fluid plastic point of view, plastic and fluidity, more fluid, that you can move more freely. It teaches you how to navigate. Yes. All you have to do is look and hear and see, and it teaches you how to navigate. The arts is impeccably important.
So maybe I'll just wrap up and thank everybody so much. Mathew Dixon, Patricia Raine, Roy Futureman Wooten. Wrap up with something that we've been doing these concerts for democracy, and Joseph participated in one that was so nice. But Joseph Wooten said, democracy needs music and music needs democracy. You know, our whole situation, we need the arts, we need the music, so we need us. Anyway, we'll just give it a big namaste here. Everybody, thank you so much. Hope to continue the conversation, see everybody soon in real life. And I'm going to shut off the Facebook Live thing right now and talk to you all soon.
Well, stay in touch, everybody. Yes.